All right. Sorry for that, family. There's a little technical difficulties going on here. Then I had to wrap some things up from work. All this my shirt, didn't even realize it. So peace and shalom, fam. What's going on? It's your brother Divine Prospect, Kingdom Harbinger Ministries, and we're back for another Freestyle Friday. Thank you for waiting patiently as we got the stream started. So to start a little earlier, I had to take care of some things, wrap up for work, and right before the Sabbath, and take care of a couple of things. And then I was pretty much trying to eat something in the interim. So forgive me if you see me eating a little bit during the course of the show. I want to say Shabbat Shalom to those of you who are keeping the set apart Sabbath. I guess some of y'all start at 6 p.m. Those of us at KHM start from sunrise to sunset. But those of you who are keeping the commandment of Yah, all praise to the Most High for that. 1 second. All right, Soul Tea drinks. Y'all interested in getting something with a heavy dose of chlorophyll, aloe, and a couple other minerals and nutrients. It's a great option. And my snack, can I call it a snack, for this afternoon is this Chef Wu. This is 100% plant-based protein, all organic items, organic ramen noodles. For those of you who are eating ramen noodles, and we discussed this before, I know this is a random tidbit. Some of y'all was eating the traditional cup of noodles and things of that stuff. That stuff is not healthy for you. Do not eat it. Okay. If you want a healthier alternative, this is a great option. And then tradition that I mentioned to y'all before, which is kosher, and that is also healthy. All right. So I just wanted to in case y'all are interested, and I always show that every time I eat or drink something, just to kind of give suggestions out to some of y'all who it may apply to, right? Let's move this over a little bit. There we go. All right. That's the first thing. Second thing is Passover is coming up soon. Those of you who do have the KHM app, if you don't have the KHM app, go to One Church in your Google Play Store, your Apple App Store, download the app. And when you open the app, it's going to ask you for a location, type 361, look for Kingdom Harbinger Ministries and select Kingdom Harbinger Ministries. We sent out a couple of push notifications, giving some information in regards to the KHM Atlanta chapter Passover event 2025 that's occurring next Sunday. And some of y'all got the email as well, but we want to get everybody who views this channel on the app and everybody who views this channel signed up with the link to our KHM groups. All right. So if you need further detail on that, you can email us at kingdomharbinger@gmail.com. We can give you more information on that. If you're interested, just let me know. All right. So again, if anybody here needs, and we discussed this yesterday, if anybody here needs a religious accommodation to get the time off, even though it's on a Sunday, some people still work on a Sunday, just email us at kingdomharbinger@gmail.com and we'll hook you up. Outside of that, anybody else who is interested in getting a calendar, digital calendar, you can click the link in the description below as well. And if you want to sign up and join KHM, link is in the description below. And those of you who are asking to be able to donate to the feast day events and stuff that we have, because you're not going to be able to go, that's fine. There's a link in the description below on how you can donate and give to KHM so you can help us facilitate these free events. All right. So appreciate y'all for that. Just want to get that out the way. A couple of announcements in regards to Passover and the like. So the Colossians lecture that I'm doing is going to be a pre-recorded session. You can follow along on the Patreon, www.patreon.com/Divine Prospect. You can follow along on the Patreon to kind of see the slides as we're completing and finishing up the PowerPoint presentation. Once those slides are completed, then I will give a time and a date when we will actually do the session. And you can get a glimpse of it on Patreon if you're interested. I'll show a preview on YouTube. But if you want to actually watch the presentation, that will be on Patreon. All right. And then I'm also, now that I got a little bit more time from work, able to work on the other presentations that I kind of started. Like, for example, we have one in regards to the serpent in the garden. What's the ontology of the serpent in the garden? I'm going to get back to finishing that. And also we have the one in regards to ye know not what ye worship. right? That has to do with the worship of the Father, Son in Scripture, and to be able to determine, does the Father and Son get the same type of worship, or is there a distinction in worship between the Father and the Son? This is very important in order to distinguish what we do from mainstream Orthodox Christianity in regards to the tenets of subscription that we have, right? So we're going to try to uncover and peel back the dogma and actually see what Yah reveals, something that has a lineage and pedigree that goes back to those Jews who were Messianic in the 1st century CE. All right, and see what their understanding was. All right. If you're brand new, please hit the subscribe button. Then click on the arrow next to subscribe, choose all, so you get all the notifications when we are live. If you enjoy this content, hit the thumbs up button and make sure you share this on all social media platforms so we can get more and more people exposed to the truth. And we can go ahead and hit the algorithm on the back of the head so it can start putting this in the feed of the general public. All right. All right. Awesome. Okay. So let's see what we got going on in here real quick. Let's see. Give a couple of shout outs. Shout out to Hebrew Ethics, Shalom, ISU Code, Shalom, Karima Poet, Lyrical Dream, Zen07 Humara, K Israel, Feed the Spirit, MF Dredson, Emmanuel. Let's see. What's that? Mishmashful. Hopefully I'm saying that right. Tommy Izzy and Judah Israel. All right. Peace and shalom to y'all who just joined in. Appreciate it. If the audio and video is okay, hit 1. If the audio and video is okay, hit 1. Want to make sure that that is working properly. All right. Let me know if everything's in sync, if everything's clear. Thank you, Karima, for the feedback. Emmanuel for the feedback. All right, good. All right. Okay, so we can get started with the show. Want to do the announcements and intro, so that's great. So I'm going to do an intro. I definitely am going to finish up this meal. So forgive me, but I'll do that as I'm waiting for any questions that y'all may have. Again, Passover is next Sabbath, but we're going to do the celebration the following day, which is the eve of unleavened bread, day 1. So if you have any questions in regards to the calendrical model that we subscribe to or anything else in that regard, definitely you can ask questions. Or if you have questions outside of that, that's fine. You know, that's what we do on Freestyle Friday, right? I give announcements. Sometimes I talk about random stuff. Sometimes I do Q&A. Well, all the time I do Q&A, take questions. Sometimes I go on a divergent path and teach on something or share some information. You never know what you're going to get. Just like Forrest Gump, box of chocolates. You never know what you're going to get, right? So Freestyle Friday, I think that's one of the lure to this actual show is that you never know what you're going to get, right? So all praise to the Most High. All right, so Feed the Spirit. Where did it get the Shabbat starts at 6 p.m.? It's because they're using the Gregorian calendar. According to the Gregorian calendar, okay, 6 p.m. is technically when the evening starts based on absolute dating, as opposed to relative dating. Relative dating, the evening starts when we can empirically see the twilight transition between day and night, right? And that could be at any time, right? That's not fixed to 6 p.m. However, those who are following Gregorian calendar and the modern reckoning of time, 6 p.m. brings in the evening, because it is the breaking point between 12 a.m. and what we call the morning, when the morning begins, to 6 p.m. and from 6 p.m. to 12 p.m. So there's actually different watches of time based on the what we call the Julian calendar that preceded the Gregorian calendar, and that's broken up in watches of time. But in today's time, you know, evening begins at 6 p.m. and that's why they have to, you know, a lot of Jews will rush and get everything done before 6 p.m. and then head home and then be confined to their house, do preparations and prepare for the Sabbath, right? So everybody's household is a little different. So Kwame, Ma'at, Ra, and Yame, Mentu Hotep, Ishi and Ishi R means exiled in a hurry. Okay. Awesome. Thank you for sharing that. Shout out to my brother Aaron Yeshuan in the building. Shalom King, what's going on? All right. Benjamin Gibson, peace. What's going on? All right. And, what's very interesting to me, I get comments from time to time where, I was getting this from the conscious community. Then I get it from other brothers who are more enlightened in the Israelite community. Like, oh, Divine, you too intelligent to be an Israelite or to follow that, etc. People say that type of stuff all the time. And I'm like, what? So no intelligence on this side of the fence. So nobody can be intelligent on this side of the fence. I don't know how that operates. I don't follow any man-made religions. As a preface, in case anybody needs a disclaimer, I follow culture and I look after the scholarship, right, concerning said culture in relationship to sister cultures, right, and relative to other disciplines of study, right, other fields of study that surrounds the subject matter that I personally am engulfed in and things that I have a personal pursuit in, right? So whether it's anthropology, whether it's archaeology, whether it's the realm of humanities that regards that, whether it's philology, literature, etc. All these things are intertwined in what we call transdisciplinary when looking into the subject matter. So I don't think by being engulfed in the culture, right, that we are constantly working to reconstruct because we see a heritage from the people that we reference in the primary source, which we call the Bible, to us today. I don't see why you have to exempt intelligence from that. That's interesting. Who we see as the creator, the intelligence that he possessed in order to create man and give man the dominion that he possessed and to have man reflect his image and likeness. I think that intelligence comes from an intelligent source. And we're just trying to tap into that source, the source of intelligence. So I don't see anything oddly strange about that. I think it is in proper alignment with what one is to expect on this side of the fence. So just want to put that out there. I got maybe about 3 or 4 comments recently in regards to that. So I don't know. Been hearing it for years since I entered this community. So it's all good. So let's see. Benjamin Gibson, shalom. All right. So you said, do you agree that translation versus it mean Israel? I don't know when you say it mean Israel. Yisrael is a Hebrew word. And what you just described, that's from what we call the Medunetia or the hieroglyphics. That's also shown on the Merenptah stele. And it's going to have its own translation according to Egyptian. So it's going to differ from what we have in Hebrew. Now, are they cognates? Yes, because Israel that you're translating, and I want to kind of get the source of where you're translating it from, is a loan word in Egyptian. It is not a native Egyptian word. So looking at the morphology of the word, we know that it is not a native Egyptian word. How do we know that? Because we have a actual resource that outlines all the loan words that we have in Middle Egyptian and Late Egyptian. So we know loan words based on their morphology. And when we look at the frequency of words that we get from lexicons, Mark Vickers is a great one if you want to look into the Medunetia. We can see all the words that are natively Egyptian and be able to identify the ones based on their morphology or their morphological rendering that are loan words. So I'm not sure if I'm going to agree with what you just said. I would have to see a source. What's your source for that interpretation? K Israel, I saw what you saw. I saw what you wrote. Do I subscribe? When you say do I subscribe, do I bind myself to oral tradition such as the Mishnah and the Gemara and the Talmud and the Midrashim that we find from various sages and rabbis? No, I do not bind myself to their authority. Now, do I read it? Do I retrieve valuable insight from it? Yes, of course I do. right? I prefer looking in the Mishnah. I don't really care much about the Gemara, but the Midrashim and the Mishnah, I do find it very fascinating, and it's historical, right? And it is something that, when I say historical, I mean from the time frame in which it was actually written, right? So the Mishnah, we get it closing out to about 200 CE, and the Gemara with the rest of the Talmud is closed out in about 500 CE in Babylon, right? And the purported oral tradition that we have today does not go back further than Ezra and Nehemiah. So I think there's value there in regards to that, but I do not bind myself to the oral tradition, i.e. the Talmud Mishnah, as you have it put there. So it's not binding to me. And the reason why it's not binding is because my ancestors, who I identify as Israelites, or what we call Black Jews, or etc., they were in Africa when that was being put together. So just like the same thing in regards to Yeshua and his teachings, my ancestors, who were his distant cousins, they were in Africa when that was happening. They was already exiled and scattered into Africa. Yeah, the Judeans came much later, but my ancestors would come from the northern tribes. So they had nothing to do with a Talmud. They have nothing to do with the modern Midrashim that you read today. They have nothing to do with that. They have a totally different experience. And if I was to go back on somebody's oral tradition or halacha in regards to the understanding of how that would look as one who is well-traveled in areas that is outside the boundaries of rabbinic Judaism that developed, I would say I would look at the around the 9th century, where we have Eldad Hadani, and he had a distinct oral tradition that was foreign to the Jews that were following rabbinic Judaism at the time, 9th century CE. And a lot of what he has depicted in regards to his oral tradition, we find aligns with the Black Jews that did reside in Africa. So that's a totally different lineage of oral tradition. And then our people, those of us who came off the slave ships from Western Central Africa, the Jews that went into these regions intermingled with the local groups there and developed an oral tradition and a migration history and a settlement history and a way that they live in the lands in which they was exiled, independent of what we get in the oral tradition. So when I look at what I would consider oral tradition, is going to go back to my ancestors that was in Western Central Africa. From the primary sources that were gathered from the Black Jews in those regions, I take all that data and I crunch the numbers, right? I analyze the data and I strip away from it anything that is nuanced, look at the core elements of it, and then use that to reconstruct an oral tradition that is in alignment with the shared experience that I have a descendant of those who came from Western Central Africa who had Black Jews intermingled with them. So the way that I derive my oral tradition is going to be independent of what was developed in Palestine and then later in Babylon, because that's a totally different situation, totally different group, right? It's not my ancestors' lineage. So that's why I don't see it as binding. Okay, so that's my perspective on that. So I've done numerous lectures on this, discussed this in numerous live streams. When I told people that, how do you know you're from Judah? I heard a lot of people. But in those live streams, I actually talk more in depth in regards to what I'm saying right now. So let's see. Shout out to Israelite Defense. Shalom. No problem, K Israel. All right. And it's interesting, since I mentioned the Patreon and why everybody should be on the Patreon, is because I just added new sources to the Patreon. Let's take a look what I added new to the Patreon before I continue to delve into what's being said in the chat. So let's get into some new stuff that we shared in the Patreon. All right. Let me share it real quick. All right, so in the Patreon, I just added a new source called The Dying Child, The Death and personhood of children in ancient Israel. So if you're interested in regards to, what we call juvenile infant deaths that occur in Israel. Now, this is a reality. I know some of us have had children who may have passed, whether they were alive outside the womb and some who may have passed in the womb. And my condolences goes out to anybody that's lost a child. But this is not something that is new. This is something that's been going on for millennia. And one way to see it in regards to ancient Israel from both the text and archaeology, this puts them both together to kind of give you a synopsis of what that entailed, right? So I think it's a very good read, and I think it'll be a very good read to those who are interested in these type of things culturally. And it's a really good source by Christine Henriksen Garraway. So we have that on the Patreon. All right. Next, I have this Sustaining Fictions, Intertextuality, Midrash, Translation, and the Literary Afterlife of the Bible. This is a fireball. So I'm going to read this here. Even before the biblical canon became fixed, writers have revisited and reworked its stories. The authors of Joshua takes the haphazard settlement of Israel recorded in the book of Judges and retells it in an orderly military conquest. The writer of Chronicles expurgates the David cycle in Samuel 1 and 2, offering an upright and virtuous king devoid of baser instincts. This literary phenomenon is not contained to inner biblical exegesis. Once the telling becomes known, the retellings begin. Through the New Testament, rabbinic midrash, medieval mystery plays, medieval and Renaissance poetry, 19th century novels, and contemporary literature, writers of the Western world have continued to occupy themselves with the biblical canon. However, there exists no adequate vocabulary, academic or popular, religious or secular, literary or theological, to describe the recurring appearances of canonical figures and motifs in later literature. So one thing you have to understand in regards to scripture is that the oldest scriptures are always typified and always, I would say, always used as source material for later texts, right? So we see things like Jeremiah borrowing from Isaiah. We see things like Chronicles borrowing from Kings. And we see several of these things occurring over time, right? When references are made to older figures in scripture like Noah and Daniel, etc., these things are referring to older source material, right? And sometimes there is an agenda in regards to the later writers when borrowing from source material to add a perspective on it, right? In which knowledge can be derived, insight can be derived, etc. So that's why I shared a source before called the Old Testament. Use of the Old Testament is a good source to show you play by play in every book of the Tanakh how this occurs, how this happens. So this goes on to show you these minute and nuanced details that are reworked and revisited and reworked. Excuse me, I'll say it like that. From later literary authors looking back at the older source material that they have. So this is a great book covering that if you're interested in it, and showed you how Midrash is used as a method for doing the same thing outside of literature, right? That we find in the Mishnah, that we find in the Gemara, etc. Right? It's just an extension of that and how all of that formulates within the medieval period, right? Great source. You should get it, etc. And then I have this one, since you brought it up, I just so happen to have these sources on Patreon, called Reading the Rabbis, the Talmud as Literature by David Kramer. Traditionally, the Talmud was read as law, that is, as the authoritative source for Jewish practice and obligations. To this end, it was studied at the level of its most minute details, with readers often ignoring the composite whole and attending only to the final decisions. And this is why I treat the Talmud so critically, okay? But anyway, methods of reading have shifted as more readers and students have turned to the Talmud for evidence of rabbinic history, religion, rhetoric, or anthropology. Still, few have employed a genuinely literary approach. In Reading the Rabbis, Kramer attempts to fill this gap. He uses the tools developed in the study of other literatures, particularly rhetorical and reader response criticisms, to unearth previously unnoticed levels of meaning. It says his book offers a new understanding of the complexity of rabbinic Judaism and a new model of rabbinic piety. So I have tons of books like this on the Patreon that deals with Midrash, that deals with the Talmud, that deals with the sages, the rabbis, that deals with rhetoric in regards to the oral tradition, etc. Right? I have all of that on Patreon. And if you're interested, this is a good repository of that knowledge. Go and knock yourself out. Right. But hey, if you want to sign up for the Patreon, it's www.patreon.com/divine prospect. And again, this is a great source to go to if you are concerned in regards to knowledge as it pertains to oral tradition. Okay. All right. So let me go ahead and stop sharing that. Go back to what we got going on here in the chat. So Shalom Divine, can you give clarification to the gopher wood and the Hebrew word gopher in Genesis regarding Noah and the ark in Genesis 6:14? Net Bible has some interesting notes. Yes, the Net Bible does have some interesting notes on that. I've spoken about this in the past, but that is an undecided perspective. It is undecided because the origin of the word is really unknown, and we're not sure where that could have come from. Some say it was pitched in regards to the wood. Some say it was sourced from other sources. Some say gopher has to do with something completely unrelated to something that we don't know today. I don't really have a definite stance on it. I acknowledge it for what it is, but if you're interested in any kind of work on it, I will also recommend you take a look at the Cultural Background Study Bible that also has some additional interesting notes in regards to the gopher wood. Let me see if I can remember exactly where it was. So let's see. Yeah, so we have it in the footnotes from pages, what's that? Pages 18 to page 18 to page 9. Excuse me, 18 to page 22. All right. So it has some good notes in it. Again, if you don't have this, go ahead and grab it. I'm going to be doing a giveaway on this very soon. I think I might do it at Passover. So whoever comes at Passover have an opportunity to win some free books, right? But yeah, so that's interesting. Again, I have an article on Patreon that talks more in depth about that. I don't remember all of it offhand, but you may want to check that out on the Patreon. Okay, if you're interested. All right. That's a new take to claim Northern Kingdom lineage. Very interesting. So Benjamin Gibson, it's not a new take. It's actually older than the 12 tribes chart. It's older than One West, and it's older than, let's say, the Commandment Keepers. It goes all the way back prior to Rabbi Ford, Rabbi Wentworth, Matthews. It goes further than that. It goes back further than the past 2 centuries, right? It goes further back than that. Because when you go to West and Central Africa and you speak to the locals there who identify as Jews, so we have some in Cameroon, we have some in Nigeria, we have some in Angola, Luango, we even have some in South Africa that we know as the Lemba tribe, etc. The majority of them, oral traditions tell you that they're not from Judah. And these are tribes that African Americans derive from. So if their oral tradition and their migration patterns all come from the north, then where's the evidence that we're from Judah? You'll have, historically, you'll have a better argument if you relate us to the northern tribes as opposed to the southern tribes. When I say southern tribes, I'm specifically Judah, because everybody want to be Judah, right? Which is crazy because Ezekiel chapter 16 said something very interesting in regards to Judah. Judah's worse than Samaria, worse than Sodom and Gomorrah. Judah's worse. Everybody want to be Judah, right? Because a lot of people are beholden to the perspective of the Tanakh, the final redaction in regards to the perspective of the Tanakh, which is a Yahwist text for the most part. There are some Elohist elements in it. There are some priestly elements in it. There's some Deuteronical elements in it. And then there's the redaction. However, it's been redacted over time to reflect the southern tribes, more particularly the tribe of Judah. It favors Judah throughout the entire Tanakh. And that's not there by accident. Does Yah have anything to do with that? Of course he does, right? But there's an embellishment that can be seen in the corpus of the text that favors Judah and demonizes the northern tribes. I mean, it's plain evident from a surface reading of the text. You can see that. So I'm just sharing that with you, right? So just want to share that. Okay, let's see. So my brother, do you think the scriptures show that Christ is the God of the Old Testament? Not at all. I don't see nowhere in the entire Bible where it shows that Christ is the God of the Old Testament. I don't see that. All right. John Murray's An Egyptian Hieroglyphic Dictionary and Joseph Davidovit's translation and conclusion on the term Israel and Menepede Stele. I disagree with that. And I'm aware of John Murray's Egyptian Hieroglyphic Dictionary. And I would say that according to, matter of fact, let me show this book to you. Got the name of the author. When you read the note on this, it shows that it is an unknown word. Where is it at? I know one is written by Benjamin J. Noonan. He speaks on that in one of his books, but where's the other one I had? Where is it? Let me see if I can find it. And then what I'll pull up is a dictionary. I remember when James Allen had shared information in regards to that with me in 2016 at the ARCE conference. And he gave me a source that he had that in too. Oh, I have to remember it. And I know also that James Hoffmeyer had another perspective on that as well. So I can't find it at the moment. I have to go and look for it. But yeah, so what I'm saying is thank you for sharing that. That's why I want the primary source. So you can put it in the chat. Thank you for sharing that. Because that is a perspective that's out there, but it's the minority voice in regards to that. Hey, shalom, sis. Thank you so much for checking that out. And thank you so much for your support and patronage over the years. I appreciate it. Thank you so much. Family still matters. It definitely does. Definitely does. All right. Let me see. I'm trying to go through everything, so I may not be able to stop on anything. So hold on one second. All right. So let's see. I watch your lectures looking for the first century evidence for the idea that the full moon indicates Rosh Chodesh. Were you saying the book of Enoch 77 is first century evidence of this? Yes. I would say it's not even first century. It's older than that. So now let me go and bring that source up. Let me see if I can find that real quick, because that's going to be from the the calendrical variations in Second Temple Judaism. So let me go ahead and grab that source real quick. Let me see if I open it up and I'll share it with you. Let's see. Calendar right here. All right, let me see. I have it up and let me pull it up. Oh, let me zoom in on this. It's definitely small. All right, so let's see if we can find it. All right, so let's go to page 181. Let's see if I can go right to it. 181, 183, 189. So let's go to 181. And this goes into Enoch. All right, so all right, here we go. This is on page 180. So let me go ahead and share that. And I gave you Israelite Defense. I gave you two pieces of evidence that I used to showcase the reckoning of the full moon as Rosh Chodesh from both the Megarians and also through the nuance we find in the book of Enoch, which has been shared by the scholars responsible for looking at the manuscript evidence and giving interpretations of what we find throughout the text. So let me share. All right. So here, let me zoom in case it may be a little too small. All right. So it says chapter 74, chapter 74 of the Ethiopic Book of Luminaries gives a description of the movements of the sun and the moon from gate to gate based on a simple arithmetical scheme that is well known from Computus treaties. The chapter, however, also contains key elements which, it is argued, represents remnants of older, what is that? What does that say? Older traditions reckoning the lunar month differently. So, first Enoch 74:3, an alternative lunar reckoning. Nugabar proposed the following translation for the verse, and in its steps of fractions of sevenths, literally single 7 parts, the full moon is completed in the east, and its steps of fractions of seventh complete darkness is reached in the west. Although Nugabar does not indicate which particular manuscripts he follows, his translation clearly suggests a sequential observation of waxing and waning of the moon, which is consistent with the material presented in 1 Enoch 73, a state of affairs which should be expected in the light of the preceding chapter, where the lunar month starts with the sighting of the first crescent. The situation is reversed if one follows the translations of either Isaac or Nib. So now, out of the 3 major scholars responsible for the Ethiopic observation, the primary source for the book of Enoch, 2 out of the 3 have this perspective, which is Isaac and Nib. It says, following a different manuscript, Isaac's translation suggests the moon wanes in 15 steps during a period of 15 days and waxes in 14 steps in the east and the west, respectively. Nib translates in 7 parts, it makes all its darkness full, and in 7 parts, it makes all its light full, either in the east or in the west. In the most recent translation to date, Nickelsburg and Vandenkamp suggests in 1/7 parts, it completes all of its light in the east and in the west, right? Both Isaac and Nib translations mention the waning of the moon first. Isaac follows manuscript A and indicates in his notes the alternative reading of manuscript C, which agrees with Negebauer's translation. Clearly, the Isaac-Nib line of translation marks a contrast with the preceding chapters as regards to the mode of observation of the lunar month from its start to its end in a sequential manner. Following chapter 73, one would assume an observation based on a cycle of first crescent, waxing of the moon into full moon, then waning of the moon into new moon. Rather, in both Isaac and Nib, one is left with the impression that the observation started at full moon and not new moon, thus observing first for 15 days the waning of the moon until its total darkness. The second part of the observation concerned itself with the waxing of the moon in 14 steps, presumably and logically from the sighting of the first crescent until its waxing culminates in the full moon. This description is inconsistent with the preceding chapter, where the lunar month mistakenly starts with the new moon. Admittedly, there is a number of variant sources upon which the translators base their works on, as recognized by Nugabar himself. It seemed tempting to utilize in its commentary to the astronomical chapters of the Book of Enoch the numerous parallels and variants found in the Ethiopic Computus treaties. Since, however, practically all of these texts are unpublished, and since only a detailed study could bring order and relative completeness to this huge mass of material, I have usually abstained from referring to such secondary sources, though they may well contain information more reliable than the Book of Enoch in its present condition. I made good use, however, of the possibility of discussing my interpretation of the text with Professor Ephraim Isaac at the Institute for Advanced Study in Princeton. Now, this is the Isaac source. This statement suggests that indeed there are a great many possible translations, as there are a great many variants which could well be more reliable. It is, of course, way beyond the scope of this present study to embark upon such a task that's suggested here by Nugabar. It says this must be left to others. However, a few points can be made at this stage. The first is, despite the best efforts of translators, translations limit the possible meaning of a text in comparison of what the sum of the sources might have implied. Second, in a treatise like the Book of Luminaries, the editorial choice of the translator can potentially alter the overall meaning and content of the work. This is evidenced from the discrepancy of translation of 1 Enoch 74 exemplified above. Third, there's somehow distorted picture with necessary color with a bias and reconstruction of the socio-religious context of the milieu in which a work emerged. In this instant, that of the late 3rd century BCE Palestinian Judaism. Fourth, this distorted picture will also influence any investigation that will rely in part upon the source in its translated form, or for that matter, in its original language, right? Back to 1 Enoch 74 and 3, the Negebar translation makes good sense as it fits perfectly with the description of chapter 73. The Isaac Nib line highlights the awkwardness of two differing manners of describing observations. Here, the curiosity of the textual critic is awakened, followed an important criterion of textual criticism when faced with two conflicting versions of the same narrative. The most awkward passage may be believed to be the most ancient in the tradition. This is the reason why Isaac believes manuscript A to be more important than manuscript B and C. Conversely, the passage which makes the text more intelligible may be suspected of having undergone some amendments at the hands of the redactors, what we may call scribal editorial correction. It is possible that in the present case, one is not only faced with simple or either of the translation of 1 Enoch 74 and 3. In other words, to suggest that the awkwardness of the passage is simply due to a literary device that perhaps akin to dismissing too prematurely some possible avenues of investigation that might otherwise bring light to the meaning of the text. Hey, if you're interested in reading more of this, then I would suggest you go into the Patreon and look up that same source. Here, what we see in regards to those who are textual critics, we understand that the awkwardness of a passage that is supposed to be referring to the same source is that awkwardness relies on the fact that the most awkward reading relates to a more ancient understanding, and that the one that more intelligibly syncs with the corpus of the text is one that is likely done by an editor. This is what we understand in textual criticism. This is why the preference from Isaac and Nib over Negebar's perspective, and again, Negebar had to consult Isaac perspective, is that this is the most awkward version, is the more authentic version, and therefore the waning of the moon begins the month and should be the preferred reading in the book of 1 Enoch chapter 74, right? So hopefully that answers your question. All right. They do. They definitely do. Shalom to Ellen Collins in the building. Jay Socham TV. Shalom. All right, let me see. Let me keep moving. Thank you. Go to the Patreon right there. Thank you for that, my sir. My good sir. All right, Aaron. There's some good Oxford sources dropped on there recently as well. Thank you so much. And that is the case. My brother Kwame, First Etymology by Egyptologist Alan Gardner's Rules of Reading Hieroglyphs. The Isi in Isi-R-I-R means exile in a hurry. In Menepidus' time, those would have been descendants of Amenophis' opponents, followers of Akhenaten. Now, I disagree with that. They are not followers of Akhenaten. Akhenaten was not a monotheist. Okay. So what people don't understand in regards to Akhenaten, and I have a great book back here on Akhenaten. Let me go ahead and grab it real quick. Anybody interested? All right, so great source on this right here is called The City of Akhenaten and Nefertiti, Amarna and Its People, right? Excellent source to get you acclimated with that, and also the archaeological proof that Akhenaten was not a monotheist. He was a henotheist, or some say henotheist. All right, and he partook in what's called monolatry. So monolatry simply means that you choose one of many deities, you single them out for worship without denying that other deities could be worshipped. Henotheism means you acknowledge that there's multiple deities, but you single one out to be supreme. He was not a monotheist, and we know this because when we see his wall reliefs, we see his mortuary tomb, and then when we see the archaeological excavations from Amarna, we see that there's iconography of other deities. Aten is who he chose to single out for worship, and he aligned himself with Aten because the city of the sun was redone at Amarna. He was beginning a brand new endeavor. These are not followers of Akhenaten. Where do you see a large body of Amu or Asiatics, right? Foreigners with the throw stick. What do you find when you find them in the city of Amarna? That is just in a large body of them that then leave out migration route, leaving out from Amarna and then settling in what we call Palestine. So we're talking about several hundred years between when we get Akhenaten to when we get Merenptah, right? So we have a good amount of time in between, right? So during that period of time, if we're saying that these were exiled followers of Akhenaten, then how can we trace that migration going from Amarna to the location in which Merenptah has them bounded and captured in Palestine? So if you have a source to that, please share. And I think that the interpretation for exile in a hurry, that is a bias based on the understanding of who the proto-Israelites would be based on the literature of the Bible. So that type of rendering is influenced biasly based on the biblical source. So I wouldn't go with that. And what I will say is that the word Israel is given a literary meaning from the literature, which we get in the book of Bereshit or Genesis. The actual historical meaning of Israel, we don't really know outside of the literature. So this is pure speculation, right? So, and again, this is not an Egyptian native word. This is a loan word that comes from the region in which he conquered those individuals, right? So thank you for sharing that. That's good, but I disagree with that, right? And I have a video on YouTube where I actually interviewed Bill Petty, who is the responsible for the Egyptian glyphery, a sign list-based hieroglyphic dictionary of Middle Egyptian, and he does have Ishrar in here as well. And then he has another book here, which is called the Hieroglyphic Dictionary and Middle Egyptian Vocabulary. So here it gives you a lot of the basics in regards to understanding the unilateral, bilateral, and trilateral roots in regards to the Medu Neter, as well as morphology, as well as syntax, etc. We have it all here, right? Alan P. Gardner is dated, right? It's still relevant, right? That's how I first got into the Medu Neter, but there are some more scholars that have come out since him in regards to the glyphery of the hieroglyphics, if you're interested in that type of stuff. And again, go check out my interview with Bill Petty on this channel at the 2016 ARCE conference. All right. And next Sunday's crazy because my Passover, right, for KHM, our Passover starts next Sunday. ARCE had another conference. So every year, ARCE, which is the American Research Center in Egypt, right, that a society that I'm part of, every year they have a conference where the world's renowned Egyptologists come all together to share new information, to present papers, to share new knowledge, insight, to sell their books and their memorabilia, and to also come and discuss all things Egypt. I've been to several of these conferences. I wanted to go to the one this year, but Passover fell at the same time. So therefore, I had to prioritize Passover than going to this conference. Now, I'm going to see if it's streamed. I don't know if it's streamed. Typically, the stream comes out much later, but I'm going to see if it's going to be streamed. And if it does, that'll be great. But the reason why I bring this up is because anytime I have a question in regards to ancient Kemet, Egypt, whatever you want to call it, I go to these conferences and I discuss it with the experts in the field, right? And I try to get interviews. I have several of them on this channel, but I haven't been in years. right? That was impacted by COVID. Haven't been back since COVID. Prior to COVID, I went to the one in 2015, 2016, the one in 2018. So 15, 16, 18. I don't think I went in 2017. Or maybe I did. I'm not sure. I go back and see. So I went to at least 3 or 4 of them. And then it were impacted by COVID, which is crazy. But anyway, so what I will do is if you do have any questions in regards to Kemet, not only do I go to these conferences and discuss it, I'm also part of the forums, the board, the society. So I can ask any one of these scholars any questions to get more feedback on a more up-to-date perspective in regards to inquiries as it pertains to Egyptology. All right. I could do the same thing with the SBL because I'm also a society member of the SBL, and I could do the same thing with SBL Society as well. All right. All right, so I've had other Israelites. Sorry, I'm going to be a little late in catching up with the chat because I'm just now seeing it. I've had other Israelites ask me what tribe I'm from, and I just couldn't answer it. Well, if they're asking me that, they're going to be basing that off the 12 tribe chart or something loosely based off the 12 tribe chart, which is wholly inaccurate. All right. So in order to determine that, I would have to know your lineage, right, as it pertains to West and Central Africa. What tribes do it go to? And from the tribes that it goes back to, if there are Black Jews amongst them, and we have primary sources or oral tradition, then you have to determine where did they say that they came from, what tribes. That's how I determine I'm not from Judah. I'm not from Judah. You could call me Judite. Oh, you're African American, FBA, whatever, you're a Judite. No. Mine's more than likely came from Zebulon, Gad, or Dan. From the oral tradition. And possibly Manasseh, but that's up in the air. I put this information out in a whole lecture on this channel, so be interested in that. I wonder if you're ready for Kramer for Seinfeld. That would be hilarious, right? Morris Green, thank you for the donation. Hey, Divine's reading Ruth 1-2 and 1 Samuel 17 and 12. Is David from the bloodline of Ephraim? No, David is not from the bloodline of Ephraim. But let's read that real quick. Ruth chapter 1, verse 2. And grab it and share it. Sorry, I just saw your message, my brother. My apologies. All right, so let me get here. All right, so, and I think people have messed up by the word Ephrathites. That doesn't mean they're from Ephraim. Ephratah is a city, a location that is in Judah. Let me pull it up real quick. Hold on one second. I think I know what the source of confusion is. All right, so let me share here. All right, so we start at verse 1. In the days when the judges ruled, there was a famine in the land, and a man of Bethlehem in Judah went to sojourn in the country of Moab, he and his wife and his 2 sons. So a man of Bethlehem in Judah. The name of the man was Elimelech or Eli Melech, and the name of his wife was Naomi, and the names of their 2 sons was Machlon and Chilion. They were Ephratites from Bethlehem in Judah. So Ephratites there, and I think Ephratites is what confuses people to think that that's referring to Ephraim. Let's look into that, right? Let's check it out. So this word here, the brief meaning is an Ephratite or an Ephraimite, right? Derived from Ephrath, which is a place name and also a personal name, right? I don't know if this is gonna, let's see if you get to the yeah. So Ephraimite compared to Ephratah in Judges 12 and 5, 1 Samuel 1 and 1 as an ancestor of Elkanah, and 1 Kings 11:26 of Jeroboam, right? But then we also see it here, Lechem, I from Samuel 17:12 of Jesse, plural Lechem, and then we see it also in Ruth. So here, right here is the reference we're looking at, not the Ephraimite reference that is clearly in Judges 12 and 5, 1 Samuel 1 and 1, and 1 Kings 11:26. When we're looking at the second entry here, the second entry here has nothing to do with being an Ephraimite, right? Totally separate. Okay. Now, if I can bring up my, let's go here. Let me bring it up here. Let's see if we get more information from these free sources. Otherwise, I could bring up my lexicon back there, Klein's Dictionary of Classical Hebrew, or I could just pull up. Here we go. Let's do something for free, what we can see. All right, let me show you here on the Blue Letter Bible. This will give you a little more insight. So, Ephrathite, an inhabitant or descendant of Ephraim, an inhabitant of where? Bethlehem. So it's not read to understand it's referring to an Ephraimite. It's referring to somebody that comes from Bethlehem. So Bethlehem would be a city that has towns. And an Ephrathite is somebody from Ephrata, which would be a town within the city of Bethlehem, which is in the province of Judea. Because this man is from Judah. So he would be residing in the territory of Judah if this is during the Judges era. So these are not displaced Ephraimites who migrated and lived in Judah and now are leaving from Judah. This is a town that is in Bethlehem, which is located in Judah, the territory of Judah. So hopefully that answers that question. Again, I'm just trying to point you in the right direction and we can go from there. But no, if David comes from Ruth, he's not from Ephraim, right? Anybody that makes that claim just doesn't understand how to delineate between these references of an Ephrathite and an Ephraimite, right? The context gives it away. That's why when you read Ruth chapter 1, verse 1, and then verse 2, you get the context, right? So 1 Samuel chapter 17 and verse 12 you have here. It says, now David, the son of that Ephrathite in Bethlehem, Judah, whose name was Jesse, and he had 8 sons, and the man went among men for an old man in the days of Samuel, right? Excuse me, days of Saul. Wow, tripping. All right. So here again, referring to an Ephrathite who is from Bethlehem, which is in the province of Judah. All right. So let me show you something else. My bad. All right. So here, I'm going to read this for you. Micah chapter 5, verse 1. Now gather thyself in troops, O daughter of troops. He hath laid siege against us. They shall smite the judge of Israel with the rod upon the cheek. But thou, Bethlehem, Ephratah, it's the same root word. Though thou be little among where? The thousands of Judah, yet out of thee shall be come forth unto me that is to be ruler in Israel, whose going forth have been from old, from everlasting. This right here is letting you know that this Ephratah, where the Ephrathites come from, is referring to Bethlehem and Judah. This is not Ephraim. All right, so hopefully that helps with answering that perspective. Okay, thank you for the donation again. All right, so let's see. Let me see. Shout out Jay Showtime TV. Yeah, I watched that channel several times before. If you have contacts with Kingdom in Context, tell them to hit me up, kingdomharbinger@gmail.com, and we can have a build. I'm all down for it. So Gadal, the prolific one, shalom. Have you read the Samaritan book of Joshua or their text since they claim Northern Kingdom? Yes, I have. And they make a good argument for that as well. Shout out to my brother Gadal in the building. So I can probably unravel that if I have enough time after I get through the rest of these comments. And Enoch, from what I saw, he said the moon is full after 14 days in a month. Yes, but you're not examining the manuscript that's derived from. So your translation probably comes from R.H. Charles. R.H. Charles is not the prominent scholar in regards to translating and looking at all the text as it pertains to the book of Enoch. But Neugebauer, Isaac, Nib, and others, they're the go-to sources. That's why when you see anything in reference to the manuscript text itself, the source text, and the primary or the prime translations from it, they're not going to mention R.H. Charles. R.H. Charles is way back in the early 1900s, and he didn't have the wealth of information that we have today in regards to the book of Enoch. And there's a lot of scholars that have come out since then. Like there's references from Manuel Tove where he discusses these what we call textual variants in regards to the book of Enoch. So the current stance is that what we see in First Enoch chapter 74 verse 3, looking at all the manuscript evidence, is that the awkward interpretation of what we see in the text, the way it's translated, is the most ancient one, and where the preponderance of evidence lies is towards the full moon waning, and that's what it's referring to. And that disparity in regards to the previous chapter shows that that is an ancient rendering of how they reckon time, which is the full moon marking the beginning of the month and the full moon waning from full to dark. Let me show you something else. See if I can pull it up real quick. Let me see if I can find it. If not, let me see if I can find it because I forgot where that's at. That's in nah, I can't find it right now. But I'll have to share that and give it for you. I'm not going to say what it is. I actually had the source in my lecture on this, but I don't have it at the ready right now. Let me see. Yeah, so shout out to K Israel. Shout out to my brother Brandon Jackson. Just curious in your take of Brandon Jackson saying he was in a cult and seeming to not following being an Israelite anymore. So Brandon is still a follower of the way. Okay. But Brandon woke up because he was with a group. And when I last saw Brandon, when was it? I gotta look. There's pictures all over. There's pictures on social media. The last time I saw him, I was invited to his house when I went to LA. Oh, it was in 2020. So in 2020, when we had the chapter launch, the Los Angeles chapter launch, I had linked up with Brandon, and you'll see the pictures is all over social media, on my social media. I had linked up with Brandon. Matter of fact, there's a video of that. Just go see the video. There's a video with me and Brandon, right? Let me show you the video. It's a video with me and Brandon. It's on YouTube. Yeah, so what I'm saying is Brandon is not referring to like people like me, right? He's not referring to people like me, because that's still my brother. And I've had communication. I think the last time I spoke to him might have been 2 years ago. I've messaged him since, but the last time we actually spoke was like 2 years ago, and he was getting back on his feet. Yo, he was in a cult because he was with a group of brothers in the Israelite community that were moving very cultish. And he was talking about this love doctrine and going to the UN and laying claim to our birthright as Israelites. He was in a cult. He's not talking about Israelites. This is why he doesn't say the word, oh, I was part of the Israelites and they were a cult. That's why he doesn't say that, because he's not referring to that. He knows there's good brothers he still links with that is in the Israelite community. The problem is, like I was telling him, the group he was in, I'm like, yo, these brothers are keeping you from your bread and butter, and you got to feed your family. That's what I was telling him. I said, bro, this is what you want to do. You can still be a follower of the way, but be incognito so that you can feed your family, right? You can worship the Most High after you get off your job. You know what I'm saying? Like, do your job first, as long as it doesn't contradict with the Most High, and then go worship the Most High afterwards. You acknowledge him in all your ways. You pray, set forth your day before you begin work, and then go on. All right. In the workspace, you can't talk about your religion. This is what they call it. I said, bro, get back to doing your job. You as an actor, you as a comedian, get back to doing that. Make sure your conduct and the content of what you're doing does not contradict with the ways of the Most High Yah, and feed your family. They had them in a very crazy situation. They had them isolated. They had them giving money to them and all of that. Like, yo, they really took advantage of that brother, bro. And I told him, bro, get away from them. I don't subscribe to this. This is weird. This is awkward. And he woke up and he did that. So he got out of it. And yes, it was a cult that he was in. Right? So let me show you this. Let me show you this video. Let me get this ad away first. Okay, let me show y'all this video. This was back in 2020. It's the last time I've physically seen him, but I've interacted with him since then, right? So let me show it to y'all. And I'm happy where he's at right now. And I want none of y'all Negroes taking the brother down. Because y'all, a lot of these Israelite groups are wicked as hell, bro. And they'll keep you away from your bread and butter. They'll make you believe that it's all about that group and that they're the only oracles of Yah. Yo, he was in a cult. Wholeheartedly, the brother was in a cult. And I'm glad he got up out of there. And I want none of young ninjas messing it up for Brandon. That's a good brother, right? And he just, I don't know, man, just fell victim to all this nonsense. All right, so come join us. Going on the journey. You'll see our pretty interest so far. This is day 3. We've been having a pretty much a good time. We just finished eating, have our luncheon, and now we're gonna meet up with the big place. All right, so see y'all inside, man. Peace. Shalom.
Thank you. I was talking to you earlier today. I should have stopped and had it on. Yeah.
What was you saying about when you see me on TV? Oh, we was talking about, so Obama was on TV talking about Trump and how Trump's somebody who got office, which he told people the exact facts of what Israel's going to do. It's so absurd to people that they're not going to believe. Even if you say Israel's going to do this, they're going to believe the Israel that's non-melanated.
They're going to look in a different direction. And hey, if you want to see the rest of that, yo, check it out yourself. All praise to the Most High. But yeah, so he was in a cult in the Israelite community, and he got out. Right? I was telling him, get out. And he got out. So all praises to that brother, man. I support him wholeheartedly. That's my brother. All right. All right. So would you say Philo is a good first century source to how they reckon the full moon and or the new moon? Yes, at that time. And I included Philo of Alexandria in my lecture. I go over, that lecture is 7+ hours long, and I cover not even everything as it pertains to the calendar. There's some stuff I left out. I said, man, I could have added this, man, I could have added that, but it is a wealth of knowledge if you're interested in checking out that lecture, what I did with that, right? Just go to the playlist and you'll be able to see the lectures. A 3-part, 3 videos, and it covers over 7 hours of content in regards to the calendar. All right. All right. So Son of Righteousness, Shalom, Shabbat Shalom Divine. Can you share a few thoughts on your upcoming message on the next or second Exodus? Yeah. So what I'm going to do is use some scriptures. I'm going to outline what the second Exodus looks like from scripture, and then what we can do to prepare for the second Exodus. Okay, so I'm going to go do scripture. I'm going to outline what the second Exodus looks like according to scripture, and then some preparatory things that we can do, because just like in the first Exodus, Israel had to prepare before they can leave out. And in the process of leaving out, the Egyptians were despoiled, so that way those resources can be used to get them to the promised land. Right? Yah's going to do the same thing in the second Exodus. He's going to regather us back into the wilderness, all of Israel. He's going to try Israel. The rebels are going to be purged out. And then from there, he's going to bring us back into the promised land of New Jerusalem with the assistance of other nations. They're going to be bringing wealth. They're going to give accommodations, transportation for us to get there. So he's going to use them to get us out of the four corners of the earth, bring us to the wilderness. How much time he's going to have us there, I'm not sure, right? But he's going to use that period to allure us once again, right? So that way we can be his people again. There's going to be rebels amongst Israel. They're going to be purged out, and the righteous remnant is going to be preserved, and they're going to be brought back into the land of Israel. All right. So I'm going to go over that scripture, and then I'm going to say, how do we prepare? How did they prepare? So in the first Exodus, when the plagues was happening, matter of fact, let's take a look at that in scripture. That's a great question, right? Let me take a look at that in scripture. Let me see how much time I have left. See how much time I have left. I think I have a few minutes left. All right. So let me go ahead and show you this in, let's go to Exodus chapter 9. I want to go chapter 9. Let's see. So Exodus chapter 9. And let's go to verse, what verse I want to get? Verse 26. Let me share it. Okay, and it says, so this is the plague of hail. Verse 26 says, only in the land of Goshen, where the people of Israel were, was there no hail. So you're going to see this where it says Goshen was untouched. There was no plagues in Goshen. When the new plagues are going to fall upon Western Babylon, right? Western Babylon is going to be the political powers, the religious powers, social powers, right? When Yah brings plagues, and when he brings infirmities, when he brings all types of manner of wars and destruction, when we have our Goshen set up, which we are to do, that is our goal, is to create an autonomous system. So that way we are networked with one another, and we have enough resources so that we are not tethered to this society when Yah judges it. A lot of y'all chant down Babylon. You want Yah to destroy Babylon, but you're not ready for that destruction, because here in the first Exodus, before they left out, they were still in Egypt when the plagues was hitting. Do you have a continuity plan in the event that you are severed and detethered from this society and how you've been living off of it? If not, that is what we need to prepare for. We need to have Goshen set up. So when Yah judges this nation, we are untouched. And after he's finished judging them and we are being persecuted, then what's called Jacob's trouble, when that persecution is over and that judgment from Yah is over, then that's a period of time where he's going to awaken the masses to see who true Israel is and utilize those masses to get Israel into a wilderness situation, so that way he can purge the rebels. He can redeem the righteous, because all Israel would be saved. Israel's going to have an opportunity. They're going to be redeemed from this situation and given an opportunity to come back to Yah. There's going to be some rebels amongst them. If you're hard-headed now, you're going to be hard-headed then. If you're obedient now, you're going to be obedient then, right? But Yah's going to give all Israel an opportunity to be saved. And then from there, he's going to take us back into the land. And then we're going to have nations and kings and dignitaries and all manner of people coming before our feet and serving Israel, right? So we're going to discuss this from the scriptural perspective, and then we're going to say, how can we prepare for that? But that is a good example of that. Okay. All right. So the idea that Abraham is from Sumer, I disagree. By the time that Abraham comes on the scene, the Akkadians is in power. The ancient Sumerians, as we know them, they were no longer in power at that time. It doesn't align with the timeline. So I say for Abraham is Middle Bronze Age, the Akkadians in power. Sumer as a city, a great city, and its people is already a distant memory at this time. So I don't say that Abraham is a descendant from the Sumerians. I mean, I don't see that in the scripture either. Sumerians spoke what we call a language isolate. They did not speak a Semitic language. Semitic languages are spoken by Semitic peoples. So that's my perspective on that. Great 202, Deuteronomy 28. Is it past, present, or future? It's all three. It's all three until Deuteronomy chapter 30, which I read yesterday, when Yah regathers Israel. So the ones that refer to us who are outside the land, it's going to be verses 64 to verse 67. Those are the ones that's going to refer to us presently and in the future. Hopefully that helps. Shout out to Jaslyn Berry in the building. My brother Scott Garrett Headley. Shalom. Shalom. Are you henotheistic? If so, please explain. Yes, I am. Just type in divine prospect, henotheism, and you'll be able to see your answer in detail. All right. Just type those three words in, and you'll get your answer. All right. Let me see. So what's my take on that? I mean, I don't really have a take. That is part of history, right? Our modern American Israelite history. And those brothers did a very commendable task by leaving here and then going to Liberia, and then from there treading through Africa and getting into Israel and in the city of Dimona. I have nothing but respect for KOI. I love the brothers and sisters in KOI. I partnered with them throughout the years. I was just there recently last year at a event that they had there, supporting the brothers and sisters. Matter of fact, I think it was Tabernacles. Was it Tabernacle? I think it was Tabernacles. And KOI will always be a part of, who I am in this movement. I respect the elders in there and the work they put in, especially their contributions to Kenya, South Africa, Ghana, and in Israel. I support KOI. Ben Amin as well was a great visionary, great leader. So that's my perspective on KOI. So truth, more truth. Hello, divine. Last week you were reading from a place in the scriptures which said that men are made in God's image. My question is, are women created in his image? Yes, they are. That's in Genesis chapter 1. And I'll read that real quick. Give me 1 second. Let me check on something real quick. All right, I got a few more minutes and then I got to bounce. But let me address that for you real quick. This is Genesis chapter 1. Let me get that real quick. This is Genesis chapter 1. And let's scroll down. Oh, let me share it first. Okay, so Genesis chapter 1. Let's move on down. Right, and it says, then God said, let us make man. You see this right here? The word for man, Adam, is the generic term for mankind and becomes the proper name from Adam later. But in Genesis 1, Adam that's used there, it's in reference to mankind, which includes both male and female, man and woman. All right. So we go into it a little more, and particularly here. And Weyomer Elohim Nase Adam Besalmenu. Right. So Adam here, right, is just the reference to man. How do we know that? Because he goes on to continue and says, so Yah created man in his own image. In the image of God, he created him, right? Him would be the reference to Adam, which in the masculine singular. Male and female, he created them. See that them? That them is made in the image of Yah. All right. All right, let me take one more question and then I'm out. Shalom Aleichem, Yem Yahu David Ben Yochanan. Okay, let's see. Of course, brother. You know how I do. I always do that. I'm consistent on screen and off screen. I know you said video's echoing, and that's because I got a speaker here. So speaker's probably playing into the mic. All right, let me scroll all the way down to the latest because I don't know what the latest is. Again, I'm a little backed up. So Zeph, please divine, I will pay you to have a one-on-one discussion. I know your wisdom and time is valuable. So if so, I would like to have a personal conversation about multiple topics. Yeah. So before you pay me anything, brother, let's have a discussion with no funds involved, right? So in the description below is a link that you can set up a call discussion with me. My calendar was reworked this week, and my admin is still working on that. So I would say wait until Monday, and then book a appointment so we can chat, and then we can go from there, right? We can discuss specifics or whatever the case from there, right? But definitely people can hire me for one-on-one conversations longer than the 30 minutes to an hour that my usual sessions provide. And I have no problem with that if that's something you want to do, but I prefer to have a discussion with you first to see the depth of what it is you want to discuss. And then if you do want to have a paid session, we can do a paid session, no problem. It'll be recorded and everything so that you have it for your own personal reference. Okay. So I appreciate that, my brother. And again, set up a free consultation, wait till Monday afternoon, and then we can go from there. All right, my brother. I appreciate that. So let's see. One last question. Anytime truth, more truth. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Good brothers. They're all over. I agree. I agree. All right. I'm just looking back on some of the things I missed. Let me just get one more question before I leave. I don't know what you mean by that. Do you believe that some of Israel will be within his borders before the word come back? I don't know what you mean when you say his borders. Can you elaborate on that a little bit? All right. So do you know where the custom of keeping it on a dark moon comes from? Yes, that's also Semitic practice as well. It's in that book that I just read from earlier. So you'll get more details in there if you're interested. Okay. All right. So I think I'm gonna end off there. Within the borders, within the border before the word comes back. So word, I think by word you mean when you say before the word comes back. When you say within the border, are you referring to like Israel today? And when you say the word comes back, what do you mean by that? You mean Yeshua, Bar Yosef, or the Hamashiach, or the Son of Man? Is that what you're referring to? Yeah, so I've been out there several times, Gadal. I have video on YouTube with me out there as well. I kept feast days with some of those brothers and sisters out there, and I went out there when they first was putting it together. I think it was the mid 2010s or something like that. It's been a while, but I've been out there and I applaud what they're doing. Like I said, I've been there several times. So I have nothing but positive things to say about what they're doing out there in the Goshen, Sparta, Georgia. And I think that's a good template for us to follow as well. And I think if we support these type of Goshens that are happening within our community, we'll get further along in our preparation for the second Exodus, right? Yeah, definitely. There's going to be Israelites in Israel when all of this happens. We're going to be all over. All over. And shout out to Gadal. Gadal, I don't know if you know, brother, but you know my perspective on the suffering servant from Isaiah 53. It's the prophets. That's been my perspective for some time. And I saw you do a video on it. I'm like, oh, shoot. Me and Gadal's in the same boat in regards to that. So I just want to let you know that, brother. You know what I'm saying? I saw your material on that. And again, been on Clubhouse when we've had these discussions and so forth. So shout out to my brother Gadal, man, the prolific one. All praises, man. All right, y'all. I'm going to end off here. This is my time. We had a good hour and 30 minutes. I'm gonna say again, we're having a Passover in Gadal. You want to come through to the Passover, Aki, you come through. We're having a Passover next Sunday. The details is in the flyer. Let me share the flyer real quick as we close out. Let me grab the flyer. Where's the flyer? Right. All right, so we have in our Passover 2025 Sunday, April 27th, 2025 at 5:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 2781 Main Street, East Point, Georgia, 30344. Free entry, right? But if you are not able to attend, or if you are attending and you want to donate to help with the cost and the expenses, the link is in the description below, but it's free entry. We just ask that you email us at kingdomharbinger@gmail.com so we can RSVP you. Again, kingdomharbinger@gmail.com so we can RSVP you and any guests that you bring with you. All right. So again, if you don't have the KHM app, go to the Google Play Store, Apple App Store, search for One Church, click and download the One Church app. It's going to ask you to search, put 361. KHM will come up, select KHM, and then you'll have the KHM app. We just sent the push notification earlier today in regards to the details for Passover. And we also sent out email correspondence as well. So everybody should have the app. Okay. Everybody should have the app. And that way you can stay in touch with the things that we have going on. All right. So it went out. All right. And again, if you're enjoying this content, hit the thumbs up. If you're brand new, hit subscribe, click the arrow button next to subscribe, select all so that you can get all our notifications in regards to what we have going on here. And lastly, share this video on all social media platforms that you have possession of to get this word out. Okay. If you need a religious accommodation form, email us at kingdomharbinger@gmail.com. We'll hook you up. And if you want to get our calendar, the link is in the description below. If there's anything that we can do to serve you better as a ministry unto Yah's people, email us at kingdomharbinger@gmail.com. Give us your feedback, your input, and let us know how else we can better serve you. Okay, so I appreciate y'all. Thank you for watching, and I agree as well. Truth, more truth. I appreciate that, brother. All right. And Hebrew Polymath, again, would love to answer that on the next live. So we'll wait till the next live, and I'll try to go ahead and address that for you. But yeah, all praises, man. Thank you for all the input in the chat. I appreciate y'all for keeping it civil and interacting with one another as well as with me. Thank you for feeding me as well as I feed you. This is how we work. One hand wash the other, both hands wash the face together. That's how we work in unison. All right. So all praise to the Most High. Baruch Hashem, Yah. And all praises. I don't know what else to say, man. Shabbat shalom to the Ozio keeping it. And I'll see you in the next live stream, family. I love you and I appreciate you. One of the highlights of my day when I do this Freestyle Friday. All right. So I appreciate y'all, man. Much love. Peace and shalom.